so we don't forget.
Yeah, good idea.
Are we ready?
Recording in progress.
Recording's in progress. Are we all ready? Okay, it's a little after 7. We're going to call the Select Board meeting of Tuesday, November 29th to order. And first item is approval of the agenda.
I'd like to add an item to the agenda regarding the scheduling of our second December meeting.
Okay, let's get a motion first.
I'll move to approve.
Okay.
Seconded. Any changes or additions you want to
Well
add?
done, sir. Yeah, I would like to add an agenda to discuss the timing, potential rescheduling of our second December meeting.
Potential rescheduling. Okay. Is there a placeholder?
Yep, number 5.
Number 5. So we'll pick that up. We'll just do it right then. And then we've got, I see an add of an item 17 at the bottom.
Sure.
Yeah, like maybe
Yeah, it can
right
be last, that's
before
fine.
citizen comments.
Let's do it.
Only
That's
because we have other people coming for specific
Yeah.
agenda items and
It's good.
actually, and Dan isn't here yet, so
Yeah.
we want to make sure.
Okay, so you want to do like 19A?
Yes.
So we have a placeholder at 18.
oh yeah, we
18
do.
with the bill.
There we go. And we've got an addition of 17, which is Jen's request for hiring a consultant to assist with town plan update. Is there anything else? So all who approve of the agenda with 2 additions, 17 and 18, signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye. Those opposed? Next is approval of the consent agenda.
I move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. There was something in here I saw that was
Thank you to the
interesting.
American.
The racial equity survey results. I would draw attention for especially those out there in the community. We did do a survey over a period of several weeks, I think. And the results are broken down. There's some interesting data in there, and I think that's something maybe in the future when we get through the budgeting and whatnot, it'd be worthy to have our team come in and report to us and have a discussion on that.
I had a couple. Sorry, I thought I turned that off. I had a couple of questions. Not that I wanted to bring them up tonight, but I wondered if we were going to have a chance to talk about it.
I think we
at
should,
some
yeah,
point. Okay.
absolutely.
They're
Yeah.
not urgent, and probably by the time we talk about it, I'll forget, but that's okay.
I'll write them down.
Yeah, now I have to remember where I wrote them down.
Do a note to self. You have an iPhone?
No. It's all good.
Do it in the notes section. Okay. Other than that, is there anything that anybody else would like to call out or comment on in the,
Thank you to the American Legion for their again generous donation for support in the fireworks.
yeah,
And thank you to Kathleen for the budget reports.
so with that, all in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Citizen comments. Is there anybody who's here for something that's not on the agenda? Or out in, is anybody dialed in?
We have Jesse Brooks from the United Way of Addison County who has an agenda item.
Yeah, okay. So not hearing any, we'll move on to the public hearing on the charter amendment for appointment of a town treasurer that wasn't listed till 7:15. What do you think? Anybody that you know of that's wanted to come to that, maybe I should
I wonder if we should just move ahead to the
move
Velcro.
ahead with Gunnar and Dan, and then we'll go back to it.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for giving us time on your agenda this evening.
My name is Dan Poulin. I'm the manager of capital projects at Velco. And with me tonight is Gunnar Tuttle. He was recently hired at Velco as a project manager, and he will be the manager for this project. And Jake Reed, he's our senior environmental specialist. So between us, hopefully we can answer any questions you might have about this project. But before I started, I don't know if you're familiar with Velco, so I just wanted to give you some background on who we are and what we do. We are the state's electric transmission company. So we provide transmission services to the distribution utilities like Green Mountain Power, Vermont Electric Cooperative, Burlington Electric. So we don't have any residential or commercial customers. We just provide power to those distribution utilities. We were formed in 1956. And we are owned by the 17 local electric distribution companies. We are regulated by the Vermont Public Utility Commission, so that's part of our process. Is when we do capital projects, we need to file for a 248 permit as part of that process, and that's what this project is, part of that process. We manage assets of $1.2 billion, consisting of transmission lines, right-of-ways. We have 55 substations, 1,500 miles of fiber optic cable throughout the state. We also have a statewide radio program so that all the distribution utilities can talk truck to truck and in the event of storms and things like that.
Okay, you ready for the share screen?
Next slide. Yeah, and then and here this is just showing a diagram of our transmission lines throughout the state. Next slide. So in about 10 years ago, we recognized that we had some aged, of the 55 transmission or substations, we had a number of them that were older and needed to be assessed and perhaps upgraded to maintain our reliability. So we identified 13 substations. To date, we improved or addressed 6 of them: Newport, St. Albans, Barry, Berlin, Sandbar, and Irisburg. And we have 2 projects that are undergoing right now. One in Rutland, North Rutland, and in Florence.
Can I ask one quick background question? So I'm looking at the map, and there's not really a junction in your lines in Middlebury at that spot, right? We're not at that fork. We're south of there, right?
Well, it'd be right on that where that red line is.
Yeah. So, but I'm just wondering what the substation does on these major transmission lines. What's the function of the 55 substations?
So these lines are, we operate at 3 different voltages actually, 345 kV and 115 kV.
Okay.
So we interconnect the distribution utility. So at these substations, we will step the voltage down from either 345, but generally 115 kV to a distribution level voltage
Gotcha.
of like 34.5 kV.
Okay.
So these substations have transformers that step down the voltage.
Okay. And so it's the interconnection with the last mile Green Mountain or whatever
Correct.
connections. Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
And there's some diagrams that will further show that.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's fine. It's a good question. So the substations that we have planned for 2023 are Middlebury and Highgate. So we filed our CPG application for Highgate, and we're preparing to do that for Middlebury. So here's an aerial photograph of the Middlebury substation. That's located on Quarry Road. Not too far from here, actually. The next slide, please. Here's an aerial view. If you're not familiar with this substation, Route 7 is on the left here, and then off Seminary Street Extension, and then to Quarry Road, and the substation is located there. But there's 2 transmission lines that run through this property. One indicated in I think it's red, is the 345 kV transmission line. That goes through the property, it just bypasses the substation. And then there's a 115 kV transmission line that stops in at the substation and is stepped down to 34.5 kV for GMP. Next slide, please. Here's a photograph from the street view of what you can see today. We have the lattice structure. You can see the transmission poles coming in to the substation. Next slide, please. And here's a diagram kind of showing, there's a one-line diagram just to kind of represent it. If I can just go up there and kind of point through it. We have the 115 kV line runs from New Haven substation to our substation in Florence. And it connects through the substation and energizes the bus. We have breakers so that we can separate that. If there was a problem on the line between, say, New Haven and Middlebury, this breaker might open up to protect the line, but you would still be fed from Florence to Middlebury. Then we have a transformer. This is a representation of the transformer, and it steps the voltage down. And we have another breaker here. And on the 46 kV side, GMP has two breakers that go on to feed their Speed Road and Middlebury lines. We also have a capacitor bank connected on that line at the 115 kV level. So last year we did an assessment. We have a process that we use where we all the disciplines will go to the substations and perform an assessment, an environmental assessment, a structural assessment, electrical security, and see what deficiencies we have. And so we've come up really, the main concern here is the control building is pretty small, and it's aged, and we want to make sure that it's reliable and can withstand. We have certain standards now for structural integrity, being resistant to gunfire and that kind of thing, for terrorist attacks. But mainly the control building is too small, and in order to put the protection and control systems that we use to protect the lines and operate the lines, we just need a bigger control building. So what we'll do is, pardon me, put in a new control building and replace all the cabling, new batteries, generators, for emergency generators in case we were to lose main power. And we want to, I'll show you in the next diagram where we're planning to put the new control building, but we're going to expand the perimeter fence to accommodate that new building. And we're also going to be replacing the water supply and wastewater systems there. We have a transformer oil containment system we're going to be upgrading. The transformer contains a lot of mineral oil, and so we want to make sure that's contained, just a rupture. And currently we have a stream that runs through a culvert underneath the substation. And that's aged, and we want to take this opportunity to relocate that to another portion of the substation along the fence line. Now, in order to do this work, it's going to take a while to go into the substation. We're going to need to build a temporary substation adjacent to the existing substation so that we can de-energize this substation and still serve power to Middlebury. Next slide. So here's a ortho view of the substation. Here's Quarry Road. Right now you drive in, there's kind of a loop driveway. The blue lines here indicate the existing substation fence. The control building is back here. You can see the power line. These are the 345 kV lines that bypass the substation. The 115 kV lines come in to that lattice structure, go to the transformer, and then step down and go out to on Green Mountain Power's lines. So the existing control building is back here. Our plan is to build a new control building up here in front of the existing fenced area and install a new fence, which is indicated here in red. The existing stream runs through the substation here, and the plan is to reroute it down here to the south of the fence. This area up here will be where we'll put the temporary this substation. That'll only be used during construction. We have an access road up here. Getting to it, we will protect that area. We'll bring in rock. We'll put down fabric, bring in rock, so we can install the substation there, and then remove it once we're done with construction. Spill containment will be placed around the existing transformer here, And then we do have some screening plants that we're going to plant in front to help kind of hide the substation from the street. That plan hasn't been completely developed yet, but that'll be part of the project. So to date, we've, as required in our, as part of the CPG process, we've mailed our 45-day letter. That went out November 10th to all the agencies, the state agencies, as well as our neighbors. And 45 days from November 10th, which puts us right around Christmas, we're able to file our formal permit application. So that'll probably happen sometime in early January. We have started the PCB, the capacitor bank that I mentioned that exists today. We've detected PCB contamination in the surrounding soil. So we've started a project to remove that as part of our maintenance. So that work is underway, or will be underway, here starting the 1st of December. And our plan is, if we get our CPG by June, is to begin construction in June of 2023, and we hope to be finished and able to commission the new substation a year later in 2024. Our estimated cost right now is $16.3 million. That's with a 30% contingency. And any questions?
Is this the first upgrade you're doing in 50 years? Or?
Is it the first upgrade?
Yeah,
No, we've done 6 so far. We started 13 years ago.
on this plant, on this project.
On this project, at Middlebury, there's been some upgrades or some maintenance-related activities over the past years, but nothing substantive.
Okay. And the PCB contamination, what is that? Can you explain?
It's in the oil of capacitor banks.
Okay.
There's PCB, which was a fire retardant, I think.
Okay.
And we no longer use PCBs. The capacitor banks no longer have PCBs here at Rutland, in Middlebury rather. But the soil from over the years,
Yep.
when there was due to leaking.
Okay.
So Jake is actually spearheading that portion of the project. If you have any questions.
Yeah, so just the long and short of it is, we're
You want to
just-
come up?
It'll record better.
so we're going to be starting the PCB cleanup on December 6th. Actually, I know it says the first there, but just due to scheduling, we're going to start on the 6th. It involves basically excavating out the soil beneath where the capacitor bank currently is. We'll take out the soil, the stuff that is regulated by the EPA is going to get taken off site, and I believe that's shipped out of state to
Yep.
a specific landfill. The stuff that is below the thresholds that is basically safe but still needs to be removed, that'll be taken to a local landfill, and then we'll bring in new soil and put back on top of it. We do confirmatory testing to make sure that we got it all. We're working with Stone Environmental. I don't know if you know those folks, but a very well-known name in the state of Vermont for cleaning up dirty dirt. So that's basically the PCB cleanup aspect of it.
Thank you.
Great.
Anybody else? I have a couple questions first. So, the PUC does all of your oversight, or does this have to go through zoning? You just have to inform us about it, or does this go through our local zoning and Act 250 as well? Is it just the
No,
PUC?
It's just the 248
Okay.
process. Yeah, the
Active.
So this, the PUC and the Section 248 process is very similar to Act 250, but we don't have to go through Act 250 as well.
Okay. And they do all the oversight for the state from that commissioner. As far as I suppose that the natural resources will do some oversight as well.
Yes, and in fact, there's a number of permits that we will need to get, environmental permits, so wetlands permits and those type of things
Okay.
that we will need to get.
Those are my questions. That's why I was curious who's watching over that.
Yeah, so the A&R, Agency of Natural Resources, is party to all of the Section 248 filings,
Okay,
this one included. And with that, we'll provide testimony that speaks to impacts to natural resources. And we'll be getting, like ancillary permits, that are necessary to complete the work. Right now, for sure, we're gonna be getting the wetlands permit. And then, the others, we're still working out as we get through the design phase.
and neighboring property owners are notified and given an opportunity to have party status?
That's
Yes.
right.
Okay,
They were listed, I think there was maybe half a dozen property owners that were,
yeah, they're pretty large properties around that, so I wouldn't imagine there's that many, but,
Green Mountain Power was one of them, I think Omea was one of them. I can't recall all the,
you've got a
There's a
couple,
farmer.
you've got a couple, yeah, there's a farm, there's a landscaper.
so they were
Okay.
all served a 45-day notice, and they'll also be served with the filing.
Okay,
And they were also invited to come in this evening
Yes.
That's
for,
right.
for a preview of the plans.
okay.
We had a public meeting, no one showed up from the public this evening, but there's still opportunities if they have questions, once they get the filings, to ask questions and provide input.
Okay, we have a couple questions in the back. You first? Can you come forward so that it can be transcribed into our notes?
This is Emily Sherrington, our Director of Public Works.
Emily, come right here and that way the owl will pick you up.
For the stream relocation, is it staying in a closed pipe?
We are determining that now, whether it's going to be culverted around the outside of our substation fence, or if it's something where we can restore it back to a more natural channel that goes around the substation. But we're still in the civil engineering phase where we're trying to work out all of the details of that. But we hope to have that nailed down by the time that we file the CBG.
Right now, is it a culvert
Right
underneath?
now, it is a culvert that goes beneath the station.
Oh, actually beneath the station.
Yes.
But it is a map stream.
It is a mapped stream, yes. Yeah.
It's a, what did you call it, Emily?
A map
Mapped.
stream.
Oh, mapped.
That triggers permit.
Thought we had some fancy stream style out there.
It's on a map.
Got it. Buzz?
I'm Director of Public Works, Operations. We have a water line runs out back of that. I think we've already verified that's completely out of your footprint.
Yes.
We have.
Yes, it is outside of, it is actually to the south of where the temporary substation is shown. I don't know if you can
Okay,
pull up that
hold on.
plan. It is to the south of where the temporary substation is. Our limits of disturbance will likely go over the top of that. And we will be exploring with our engineers whether it makes sense to do municipal connection into that line or drill a water supply well on site. So
Is that the old line? Is that the 1920s line?
Dated, Dan probably knows how old it is, but
Yeah.
2930.
So the plan is up on the screen now.
yes, so the water line, actually, we found it when we installed this structure in the 2000s. It runs generally through this area, and it is to the south of where our temporary substation is.
That comes right across Joel Palmerville's fields there, right?
Yeah, I think yes.
Yeah.
It is, I believe it is on Velco's property as it crosses there. It is.
That's just a feed line for the reservoir, right? That's not necessarily like a service line, Dan?
There are some taps off of it.
Are there? Yeah.
There are places that have tapped off of that as it comes from Route 116.
Okay.
It's
It's not a pure transmission.
Okay.
If it's not feasible, we'll end up.
Oh, no,
doing
no,
water
it's fine.
supply.
I think it's just older, so you should,
Be careful with it.
please.
I'll break it and install a new one.
That's right.
Sometimes those older pieces of equipment function better when they're not disturbed much.
We were very happy to see that the water line was to the south of where the temporary substation was proposed. So we didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
Is there expected to be a significant amount of traffic as part of this construction?
There'll be a fair amount of truck traffic, particularly bringing in gravel, and then again, removing it, bringing in materials, and then just day-to-day, during construction workers there.
Will that be mostly on the 116 side of Corey or coming through town?
They should be hauling out of gravel pits, which will be
I would think.
all east of town.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we haven't sourced that yet, but,
Odds
I
are.
think it's likely that that's where it will be from.
I think you'd make sure he's not coming through town on those. That wouldn't make any sense.
You know, we had some, from Florence, we had some extra gravel. We
Yeah.
actually had to crush stone in order to make a room for this substation there. And we had considered at one point hauling that rock up here, but it just didn't make sense.
Yeah,
The greenhouse gases and the cost of.
Well, that still wouldn't come through town because you would cut off before you ever get to town.
Go up foot.
We were thinking maybe if we were to backhaul with the Omea trucks, you know,
Right.
coming up here,
Yeah.
that might make sense. But it really, economically, it just didn't make sense. And so we're likely just take it right out of it. I mean, that's our only option actually at this
Yeah.
point because we've gotten rid of all the other gravel now.
Okay.
We donated it to the
Yeah.
state agency transportation.
Okay.
Great.
There's no, thank you very much. Appreciate the
Thank you.
presentation. So now I'm going to circle back to our warned public hearing. And find it here. So back to item number 6 on the agenda for this evening, public hearing on charter amendment for appointment of a town treasurer by the select board. And in preparation of a March 6, 2023 town meeting vote for a proposal to amend the town's charter to provide for the appointment rather than the election of the town treasurer. Tonight is our second opportunity for the select board to take public testimony. In accordance with governing statutes 17 VSA 2641 and 17 VSA 2645, the board is conducting a second public hearing to take questions and comments from the Middlebury community regarding a proposed change to the town's charter for the appointment rather than the election of town treasurer. If you have a question or comment, please raise your hand if you are in the room, and when recognized, come forward to the table up front so that you can provide your testimony or questions. If you're on Zoom, please use the raised hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window to be recognized. With that, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this matter? Not? Is there anyone online to speak to this matter? No. So, I think I hope it's a non-issue. I think we should maybe get John to explain in closer to the election day so people know what they're voting on and what our rationale is. But since there are no further comments regarding the charter amendment for town treasurer, I'm going to call the public hearing closed. And now we will move to Chief Hanley. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. This is in regards to cruiser bids. Put the bids out a little bit earlier this year because when we awarded the bid last year, actually earlier this year in January, apparently by the time they got the purchase order, it was beyond the time when that model year was being manufactured, and it's on hold. We still haven't gotten that car yet that we bid on in January. So here we go. We have a low bid from Stone Motors for a 2023 Dodge Charger. That's the one I'm recommending. You've got a list of the other bids. The Ford Hybrid, which we've ordered the last couple of years, is just a tad under $40,000. It's a lot of money. We've had some problems with one of the hybrids, been out of service a lot. I believe there's some problems with the electric motor. So we're going to go back with a tried and true Charger. We've got probably a delivery date on that for 120 days, plus or minus. So whatever we order is going to take a long time to get here. This is normally a 2-cruiser year, but due to the fact that we're spending a lot of money now to replace our communications system, this will offset the cost of that at least for 1 year by doing with one car.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Is that hybrid still under warranty, or
Yeah, oh yeah, it's had warranty repair.
so what seems to be the problem? They can't figure it out? Or-
Yeah, it's just an issue with the car. The electric motor and some other issues with the car.
It's just a one-off thing, or it's just that model has a problem?
No, the first one we got is fine.
Okay.
First one is fine. This has just had some bugaboos with it. It's in service now, but it's been out of service more than in service since we've had it. Again, it's a fairly new model. They
Yeah.
haven't made that many of them. They're limiting how many they make, which is why it's so hard to get one.
Right.
The 2022 we ordered, it's going to end up being a 2023. So they've got a clause in their bids this year that if we have to order a different model, it's going to affect the bid price, obviously. So I think we're going to be in better shape this year just to go with the Dodge Charger. The upfit costs are going to be cheaper, simply because we can reuse some of the equipment. So we're not going to have that huge upfit cost that it costs us with the Explorers.
So for the one that we ordered in January, do they have to sell it to you at the 2022 price?
Yeah, that was the bid award,
Okay.
but they put the caveat now on their other bids.
Right,
I
right,
understand that.
Sure.
There's nothing that was out of their hands.
right,
Yeah, it's kind of new business rules moving forward.
yeah.
Because a lot of the manufacturers used to lock in and guarantee when you ordered something retail, and they've stopped doing that, so.
Yep.
Okay, if there are no other questions, do I have a motion from the board?
I move to award a contract to Stone Motors CJDR for a 2023 Dodge Charger Police Cruiser in the amount of $27,873.
Second?
Moved and seconded. One more opportunity for comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Easy peasy, chief.
Yeah, just a note that we did get a $12,000 trade-in value for the car that's going. So that's kept the price of these things.
So this is after the trade-in, right? The 27,000?
Yes, that's after the trade.
Bummer.
Is this, yeah, is this,
It's so cheap.
is this ready to roll at that cost, or is there an outfitting
There's an outfit
expense?
cost.
Yeah,
We're trying to build into the upfit cost, rather than getting saddled with these unusual capital requests, is everything the car needs. Every 8 to 12 years, we replace the radio now. Every 8 years, we replace the light bar.
perfect.
Certain cycles to do that. It's
Yep.
a little higher upfit cost, but it's lower in the long run. If we had to make these capital costs for all this stuff.
Good.
I'll be around for the Turning Point Center,
Oh,
in case you
okay.
have any questions on that.
Okay, thanks, chief.
One more question before you go. Are you gonna move the 2 cruiser bid to next year, or what is that gonna do to your cycle?
We're going to go 3 years in a row with one cruiser, but right now, we don't even have new cars yet. And we're a little bit short-staffed, so, things just work out in the opposite. We're not putting the mileage in, we're not beating up the cars that we normally would.
Okay,
So things I think will work out. We got a little bit lucky
okay.
by being unlucky.
Emily? You brought Dan with you,
Dan
the
is
guy who knows
semi-retired already.
everything from 1929?
Uh-huh, that's right, a little relaxed.
I just volunteered to work Christmas Eve today.
Yeah, I thought it was a Saturday.
So we presented the landmark engineering proposal from, for South Street for the water line portion of the project that we're proposing for next summer. We brought that to the infrastructure committee meeting November 17th, feels like a lifetime ago. And they agreed to approve it and recommended to send it forward. So essentially, it's a engineering proposal for everything through bid phase, and then also if there's change orders during the construction, and also includes as-built after the construction for $28,760.
I'll move to award a contract to Landmark Engineering for the engineering agreement for the South Street water line final design at a total cost of $28,760.
I guess there's a typo.
One correction, it's $28,706.
Oh,
It's different.
$28,706.
Okay, moved and seconded. Just saved $54. I like that. I might get us a steak.
It'll be a drop in the bucket for the engineering review part of the contract,
Yeah.
which is what, like 80,000?
And then so this will get us a firm start on that, finalizing that project.
Get us
This
through.
is the number one ARPA project that you have right here? Yeah.
And where was South Street on that water priorities list?
I don't know, it was probably on there, I don't know what its rank was, but this has been, well, languishing since 2012. So when we first started South Street, and we phased it in 4 phases, this would be, actually 3 phases, this would be phase 4. Water main, and then the sewer and highway and storm sewer would be in 2024, which would be phase 5.
I don't know that it was separated out necessarily on the priority list, but in order to upgrade the wastewater on that, we have to separate the water line because they're too close right now. So we have to do this, right? We have to do the first phase of this.
So we could do it in a couple of different ways, but we have funding to separate the storm and water, or storm and sewer. But that funding we don't have like the final agreement for it yet. We know that we're guaranteed it. So we decided to just do the water this year, this coming season. That way it will relocate it to the east side of the road. And then once the other funding is secured, we can do that work. So.
What kicked off South Street? Were the branches?
Well, what kicked it off was what Emily just said, the CWSRF fund awarded us $664,000. And they like to turn those projects around pretty quickly. And so the phone call to us was, if you got a project we'd like to fund it, I said, I've got a project, so if you fund it, we'll build it. So we're going to build it. In order to do that, we have to do the water main first. So that drove, the grant really drove getting that water main first. It physically has to be moved to the east side of the street.
Oh, okay.
And you just knew that? You knew
Yeah.
it was, okay.
So to go back a little bit more, the CWC, I'm not gonna say it right.
I know.
They're the clean water.
Yeah, I know.
And this goes back to the combined sewer overflow stuff and separating. There's some storm water still flowing in the sewer on South Street, and that goes back to solving some of those problems.
And that was all in the water audit or whatever?
No,
No.
you mean the
Information.
hydrology study?
Yes.
No,
No.
total different. The problem is the water line is you have to have a separation distance.
No, I get that part. Yep.
And so we have to move the water line to upgrade the sewer line. And so that's the main reason for doing the water line work, It's not necessarily
Okay, so
related to the
sewer
hydro.
was the issue,
Right.
but then we had money for the, okay,
Right.
I got you.
So the sewer's the issue. We got the grant to do the sewer in order to do that work, and we have to move the water line, so.
And we knew the sewer was an issue because we just,
Because-
CSO, combined sewer overflows at pump station 3 for years.
okay.
And we identified years ago that we needed to upgrade that sewer line at some point
Okay, I got you.
due to infiltration and so on and so forth. So all matched well.
How much stormwater do we have right now in our septic sewer? Do you have a sense? Because I understand that at some point it gets that your septic sewage is so rich, I guess I'll use the word, that you actually need more water added to it for most wastewater systems to operate well. I think I've run into this before.
I think that it's probably better to say what consistent waste is what's good for the plant,
Okay,
you know, as a generic statement. So, yeah, diluted wastewater is not necessarily the easiest thing to take care of. There's a whole dissertation about, is it better to treat all the stormwater that comes into the sewer plant, you know, and treat that, or do you let it go out into the, you know, into the streams and creeks and rivers and drainage ways and,
sure,
yeah, that's a whole other thing.
yeah.
I think there's water brought in the belt press process, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
That might be what you're thinking.
yeah, it might be what I'm thinking of. Okay.
As we look at the next phase of our treatment plant and facilities, will this help us save money there at that point? Because we will have to have less capacity between this and what's going on with the,
It
Generation?
won't change our capacity needs. It'll just save the river from potential
Okay.
overflows.
It'll save us from the state.
from dumping?
Fining us for
Okay.
having combined sewer overflows.
Okay.
Okay.
Appreciate the clarifications. So we have a motion and a second, and are there any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Okay. I think we're turning it over to Kathleen for budget discussion then. Did you have anything else while you were here?
We're after,
We're on the-
we're on part B.
Okay, why don't you just hang loose right there then?
So starting off with the overview of the budget timeline, we're entering into the thick of our budget timeline with our first preview of the capital budget tonight. And then you'll be looking at the operating budget at your 1 or 2 meetings in December, depending on what you decide about that. Working hard through January with a public hearing on the budget, and on January 10th is recommended. Final meeting in January is proposed for January 24th, setting us up in time to warn the budget for the town meeting in early March. So that's the overview of the budget process. And then next is the early view of the major drivers. I always like to share with you things that I know are going to be increasing, so you can keep that in mind as we review the requests before you. So, as always, we have wages increasing. We have currently have $3.7 million in wages in our budget, looking at just under $4 million for FY24. These are early estimates based on the information I have so far. Benefits except workers' comp, increasing $206,000. We have a 18% increase in health insurance, which is the major driver there. most of the other insurances and benefits stayed flat. We do have the payroll driven, so as our payroll increases, so do those benefits such as retirement and payroll taxes, which are included in that budget. Workers' comp insurance, we were recently notified by our insurance company that our modification for workers' comp insurance decreased greatly, so we'd be looking at a decrease in workers' comp insurance. That number will be refined when we actually get the bill. Like everyone, we have our vehicle fuel increasing substantially. We're going to be adding the PD adaptive reuse bond. As you may recall, in this process, we chose to go with a 7-year payback, with the thinking being to save on interest costs and, if needed, tapping either the Cross Street Bridge Fund or the local option tax to pay the difference in that bond. Capital improvements increased by $92,000, and we'll hear about that more. So these are only the selected few items that I see significant changes in. There will be nickels and dimes everywhere, so the increase will probably be more than this when I show you the actual numbers next time. But for these selected items, there's Andy's favorite number of 666,386 divided by the grant list of 9.8 million, and we're looking at just under a 7-cent increase, or an 8.5% increase in the budget. Potential offsets include local option tax. We have $1,050,000 budgeted in FY23. FY22 receipts were $1,271,000. Interest in the FY23 budget's $10,000. Interest rates have increased, so there's probably some room for movement there. Also, we'll be learning what the growth in the grand list is, so that may ease the increase somewhat as well.
Thank you for putting this together to give us an early overview.
So with that, I'll just move into the capital budget request, and any department heads, Dana and Chief Emily, that are here and would like to share their slides, I'm welcome to, I'm happy to step aside. Okay, for the administration, that meaning the municipal building, we have our typical set aside for PCs and network replacement, so that we don't have any big hits along the way. Painting the interior of the town offices. Been here 7 years, almost 7 years in April. Wow. Department of Public Works. Emily, you want to take it?
Sure. So some of this, I guess, is also summarized in the other slideshow that we put together, but essentially we gravel road improvement. There weren't big changes in a lot of
Yeah,
places.
maybe if you just want to hit the highlights.
For the major areas. I'd say the biggest one to me, I think, is the stormwater projects, the $80,000. That is a new allocation from $40,000. We have a number of, we have 4 expired permits that we are co-permittees on that all have to come under compliance with the new 3-acre, the 3-9050 stormwater rule. So that that will at least get the ball rolling for doing feasibility analysis and studies to figure out the best fit for the town where we can start accommodating some stormwater treatment systems. I feel like the other ones are pretty similar across the board with increases over time. Right? Yeah, there weren't any other big ones. The sidewalk program had a slight increase this year from, it was 1,33,900 last year. 133,900. And so that increase, we have quite a bit of sidewalk that we're looking to replace as part of the South Street project. But we've identified a few other segments around town too that need some attention in the near future. And then in terms of, on that next slide, Kathleen, the highway construction, Lino Lane and Kingsway were engineered as part of the North Branch project, and due to the cost of asphalt and everything else this year, they got removed from that project, and so we were going to try to move those forward next year. And then we're also looking into Bakery Lane is currently being engineered, and that would have some capital improvement funding, as well as Seymour Street would be engineered. That's a project that has previously been engineered, but it was 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
So it needs to get reviewed, and then there are new concerns for traffic calming, pedestrian safety, bike lanes, things like that, trying to see how we can make those improvements. And then Foot Street will also utilize some of the funding. We're proposing to replace the water line on Foot Street, which will tap into some of the ARPA funding, but I think we'll also need additional funding for that.
I'll just add, we've had, I think Kevin Priza was in some months ago talking about a solution for Seymour Street. So this is set aside towards a future V-Trans Class 2 paving grant. And so we're trying to get some, that little nest egg set aside so we can do some grant match funding for that. Maximum for that grant is $175,000, so we're starting to set some funds aside to pursue that. Wanted to point that out.
Good.
When do you think we can apply? Because we just did Katy Road, thank you.
Yeah.
When can we apply for that again? Is it 2, 3 years? 2, 3 years?
Well, it's usually maybe 3 to 4,
Oh, okay.
but I think we won't have engineering ready for spring, late winter, spring for this year, but certainly next year that will all be ready to go. Costs will be identified. We have the data for the grant application, and would also pretty close coincide to being fundable in our term. So that's kind of the hope.
Okay. I knew you had it all figured out. I just couldn't remember.
Right?
Yeah, and we can apply. We just probably won't receive it.
Yeah.
Along those lines, the Downtown Transportation Fund, the initial draft of the capital improvement budget included $40,000 for a match for a yet-to-be identified grant application for the Downtown Transportation Fund. So the Infrastructure Committee recommended that we delay funding that till we actually know if we are awarded, and the timing for budgeting that to coincide with construction would work for FY25. Fire Department, the Dorax, in addition to their usual routine capital improvement requests to replace radios and turnout gear and the like, the fire department's asking for door control access system replacement at both stations. The current system is offline and is not working, at least 3 to 4 days a month. This system was installed with the fire stations were either constructed or remodeled in 2012. The replacement would be a cloud-based system, eliminating the need for a server. Do you want to?
So the library has, so we've got some funding for a window replacement. This will be the final phase of addressing all of the library's window needs. We're going to replace 6 basement level windows that look into the youth room and are the source of much moisture and rodent access, I believe. Infotech, that's the rolling replacement of our library technology, so we request that every year, and we use it every year for computers, both public and staff. And then if you go down, Kathleen, the big thing this year is additional funding for the project team. We're requesting 100 and I have those up in my head.
63.
160. Yeah, thank you, Andy. I'm a books person, not a math person. And so that's primarily for professional design fees. We're hoping to put a bid out sometime this spring. And we do have funding in this fiscal year to get started on a feasibility study and conceptual designs. But this $148,000 will take us through fiscal year 24, so it'll finish the feasibility study and move us into the next phase, which I think is construction documents, but I would need to check with Judith about that. And then some additional funding for our fundraising consultant, who's been helping us sort of lay the groundwork for a capital campaign, and hopefully in the next year will be helping us a lot more as we get underway with fundraising.
Thanks, Dana. I want to make one quick comment on the fire piece. It seems like a potential problem to have a cloud-dependent physical access system. If you have a network interruption, you definitely need to have secondary methods, or you have to go to like it just opens up if it can't talk on the network kind of situation. There's reasons not to do that as someone who looks at physical access systems. Yeah, in my day job.
We'll have the chief get a hold of you.
I think that'd be great. I actually think I have a date scheduled with him shortly.
And moving on to Chief Hanley, Police Department.
Yes, Chair, yes.
Yeah, it is.
All right, what we do every year, again, every year, we try to upgrade our computer systems. And rather than scrapping an entire system and having to replace it, we do upgrades every year with the capital improvements. And every 4 years, we replace the server, which is usually the big ticket item. And Kathleen, do you have the amount on this year's? It's not a server year, I don't believe.
Yeah, hold on.
Servers?
Okay, for those of you that are following along in the line item, so you were asking about the information technology?
Yes.
It's an 8,000 year
Yeah.
and another 8,000.
That's the year we generally start replacing some of the peripherals just to keep the network alive, but the server isn't going to be replaced. That's usually the big ticket item about every 4 or 5 years. And that includes all the different technology we have at the police station. Sometimes it's one of the security cameras, sometimes it's anything that is involved with our network system at the police station. Generally, it's software upgrades, things like that, a lot of minor stuff.
Is the repeater a different one than the fire department uses?
Yes,
You don't use the same one?
we're on a different spectrum.
Okay.
They're on the VHF spectrum, we're on the UHF spectrum.
I was going to ask that as well.
Yeah, we're up in the 460 hertz, and they're down around 150 something. It's a different spectrum, so the radio systems are not
Okay.
compatible with each other. And that's typical with fire departments. They're on the VHF, and the police are all on the UHF system that was set up by the state about 40 or 50 years ago.
Wow.
And then we put a little bit of money away every year to replace eventually the HVAC system, which is entering its 20th winter. So it was given a 15-year lifespan, but we keep it going. And it's still running fairly efficiently, and we haven't really had to do any major repairs to it. Every so often a pulley or a belt or a motor or something goes, but generally it's still operating good. But we started, I don't know how many years ago now, putting away about $5,000 a year to set against any kind of capital change. And then the repeater replacement. Again, it's going to be 20 years old next year. It is no longer a serviceable repeater, though it does work and it works fine. But I'd rather not have the thing crash and then we're out of business. So this is a scheduled replacement. And the last one would be the radar driver feedback signs. These aren't kind of signs that we would collect data with. They are simply driver feedback signs, and they run just under $4,000 a piece.
Have they been working, the ones that we've got?
We do. We start taking them in when we get toward winter weather, because stones get kicked up on them and things like that.
Yeah.
Plows pushing stuff, sometimes they'll get in and
But when you move them into an area, do you feel, or are we getting any noticeable, fewer calls of speeders in that region?
Yeah, they have a bit of a shock value, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
If you leave them there too long, they become invisible. So we try to just move these around to various trouble spots whenever we can. And we've got 2 that we're using right now, and this will give us 2 more so we can do it. David Pasilli has gracefully volunteered to help us improve the signs and manage them. He takes them and charges the batteries, we give them the places they have to go, and David goes out there and puts them up, which is really an enormous help to us.
Bristol does a great job in having changing comments on their sign as you come in from the east on 17. There's always something different that it says depending on where you are versus the 30 miles an hour to help make it fresh, I guess.
I do. Those are permanently mounted signs, and they're quite a bit more expensive. Those
Okay.
are around $7,000 or $8,000 a piece, and you can change the messages. These are just dumb signs with a speed.
Yeah.
They're radar operated. They tell you how fast you're going. I thought we could get more bang for our buck by being able to move these around. Those kind of fixed signs work better when you have transient traffic, like the one we put in East Middlebury some years ago.
Yeah.
It's a lot of out-of-state through traffic going through there, so it has more of an effect. If you put one of those signs in a residential area where you pretty much have the same people going by,
Every
they
day.
become invisible after a while.
Sure.
So that's why we wanted to go with the signs that we could move around, address trouble spots, put them back later if we could, and just, I think they're a little more effective.
Did the sign ever make it over to that cutoff through Butoff where we were getting a lot of complaints? Wait, remember where I'm talking?
Yeah, Rogers Road,
Is it Rogers that they were
across
talking
from my
about?
store, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have to check to see how far we're along at moving these signs around. There's a ton of places that have been asking for them.
yeah,
So
I'm
we'll-
just curious, that was one group that was very vocal at a select board meeting
I
some
think we
months
had one
back.
up quite a while ago.
We did,
Rogers
okay,
Road.
That was
yeah,
last
That
year.
might have been spring or last fall.
okay. That was about the time that they had come and spoken to us. I'd be curious if it was, because it was during our project.
Right.
People were cutting through. 'Cause
Yeah.
We did the same with Charles Avenue during the project, but we were actually monitoring speeds. So we were using one of the boxes that gave us a listing of the speeds that we could download.
So that would be fascinating to know, because we'd have data. Is there, how much to get one that actually gives you data that provides feedback as to how many people are speeding and how much over the speed limit they're going?
They're expensive, and you've got to pay about $1,500 a year for the data.
Oh, jeez.
It's a service fee that comes with that. So we have recently bought ourselves a new set of road tubes that we're going to be using. They're much more effective at collecting data. They don't have the vagaries with the radar unit that are subject to interference. There's a number of things that can interfere with that.
Sure.
And you can only do one way at a time. So if you're trying to get a speed survey on a road, you've got to do it twice as long as you can with the road tubes. But now, since we had snow on the ground, we're not putting road tubes out.
Okay, so you do have a method to capture that data?
Yeah, we've got a couple of methods. We're still paying the $1,500 a year for one of the boxes.
Yeah,
The road tubes is just, we don't pay anything. The software download was free. We can put the tubes out and just collect the data from the tubes.
I'm having a hard time envisioning what kind of tube is capturing,
It's a thing
Yeah,
that's
across
there.
there. You just drive over them.
and that tells their speed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the time between.
Timing between the tires.
Oh,
Depending on how sophisticated you get, it'll tell you what kind of.
and I
vehicles
tried
they
to
are.
jump them all the time.
No, you got the sophisticated.
If you miss one, it'll
ones.
really confuse them, so.
Yeah.
They give you incredible data for these, how many vehicles, cars, small cars, trucks, motorcycles. I don't know how the thing senses that from just air pulses, but it does.
Yeah, okay. I know, now I know what you're talking about.
Previously, we had been using regional planning. Mike had come out and put a set of tubes out for us.
Yeah,
The last set of tubes he put out for us got run over by a lawnmower. Destroyed the hell we saw.
Chief.
We lost our study on that.
yeah.
Wait.
And
Yeah.
So when we have roads of significance, it's easy for you to survey that road and give us feedback.
it is. We just don't do it from November to through
Yeah.
March.
You don't want to plow those off?
It's about as effective as the lawnmower.
Yeah. Okay.
Plow might do a better job, though.
You think so?
I think it might take the whole thing,
Yeah.
just dragging it down.
Radio system?
All right, this is what we've talked about a couple of months ago. This was the total cost of the radio system that we're going to be paying for a number of years, at about $23,000 plus a year. Of course, the first year we had a grant for it. The second year we're paying for it with holding back one of the cruisers, and then from the third year through the fifth year we'll be paying the full boat for that. We've built a way to continue the system so we don't experience the failures that we have with our current system, which is only 10 years old. So we should be able to sustain this, and we've got a sustainment plan with software and hardware replacements and upgrades through this process. That's built in with the cost. So we shouldn't be confronted with this issue again, at least not for another 15 or 20 years. This is the, just a Siri camera replacement for the department. You know, our cameras were put in when we built the building. Some of them are old. We've been replacing some of the peripheral stuff, but now we want to actually get a bigger capacity DVR. And actually that stuff is going into the cloud. So it's going to be a lot more easy to manage than the DVR system that we've had for 20 years is really too small. So this will replace all that.
Thanks, Chief.
So you know what the security camera system does. We have events that happen in our building, in the booking area. They occur in the lobby, and it just records voice and imaging on these things that occur out there. We've had people fighting in the lobby. A lot of nasty stuff happens at a police station. You know, that it's good to have the video evidence to deal with. It's also integrity assurance for us. We had a woman complain that her officer was abusive to her in the lobby, and we pulled the videotape. It just didn't happen. You couldn't even infer that could have happened. She was about as polite as could be, and she was just angry that she didn't get what she wanted, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was nice to be able to fall back on that video system to show that. But it's also in the booking area where you bring in people that are sometimes violent and combative. And it's nice to be able to preserve that as well, in addition to video evidence for drunk drivers and things. So that's part of this entire system as opposed to just, you know, showing property protection.
Is this kind of system made specifically for police?
No.
Or it's just a regular, anyone could buy it?
Yeah, anybody could. We spec'd it out for what we need,
Mhm.
without the bells and whistles that we don't need.
Mhm.
So we could get the basic information that we could capture with the system.
It's not one of the ones that the government says not to use anymore, is it?
No.
Okay.
No, we reviewed a number of different ones, and we'll go with one that we're pretty happy with.
Chief, where you at on staffing now?
Well, tomorrow, we'll be filling one of our vacancies. He's dropping off his paperwork tonight. I think you'd be pretty happy with him. He's got a master's in public health. He works for University of Vermont Hospital, and he's just had a change of heart on what he wants to do for a career, and he selected us. He found us, he selected us. And after a lot of interviews, a lot of discussions, a wonderful background investigation, we offered him the position. He will be starting with us kind of on a part-time basis for the next month, because he doesn't want to leave he works for a number of physicians, and he didn't want to leave them in a lurch and suddenly walk out. So we'll be job sharing with UVM for about a month and a half. In the meantime, we'll be getting him ready for the academy. He will go to the academy February 6th, and then he'll be on the road by September. It's a long haul when you hire someone.
Yeah.
We've got another candidate that just came to us. That's a part-time certified officer, and we're going to begin the hiring process with her. She did fine on her initial examination.
So that leaves you short. How many? Once they're on,
Once they're both on, we'll be fully staffed.
be fully staffed.
And we have an officer who's been out of work for a while with surgery. We expect him to return sometime January or February.
So you only have one out currently.
We have one out and 2 empty spots,
Yeah.
which are in the process of being filled.
Yeah. Wow.
Going to need a car soon.
Yeah, if we could only get one.
Great.
Okay. Any other
Thanks, Tom,
questions,
for that
Chief?
enhanced capital improvement budget report. Little bonus.
Yeah. And I'll see you tomorrow about him, if you're gonna be here.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Parks and Recreation, do you want to do Parks and Recreation? Or do you want me to run through?
I can give it a shot, I haven't
Yeah,
looked at the slides,
okay.
but I kind of
Yeah,
know what we're doing.
yeah.
I don't think there's any surprises in it. Every year, we set aside money for resurfacing of courts. Some of them are 4 or 5 years before you have to resurface, but it's a big dollar amount, so we put money aside every year for that. Sports Center roof, we started looking at replacement of that and are just putting some markers in right now. We don't have any designs or prices for replacement, but it's coming to that age where it's going to have to be replaced, so we want to make sure it's funded.
That's the ice rink?
The ice rink, yep. Some work at the Jack Brown baseball field out in East Middlebury, which is some infield work, and I think we're going to add some benches, yep. The same thing happens with the gym floors with the outdoor courts. That gets refinished every couple of years, so we set aside money for that. And then the dance floor, we had a dance floor donated, I don't know, 3 years ago maybe. And the floor itself is fine, but there's a rubber membrane on top of that that needs replacement, so we set aside some money for that. Gymnastic equipment, right now gymnastics is held in the gym, so it takes up a lot of floor space. Looking at the size of the classes and the need, we could actually move them to the multi-purpose room with some different equipment, so we put in, I think it's $5,000 for that to free up some space in the gym and be able to coordinate some more activities in there. The bike pump track, I think is really close to being buildable, so we put some money in there to kind of make that happen. I think maybe that could happen next year. We're still waiting for some designs from them, but that's just a contribution from Parks and Rec.
There is $10,000 in the budget proposal.
Yep.
I thought that they were going a Kickstarter route on that. I've been kind of waiting for a solicitation from
We have
those
two
guys.
things. We have a bike pump track and we have a skate park.
Right,
Skate park is a much bigger dollar
absolutely.
amount.
The pump track guys were in here, and I thought it was like they needed 24, and they thought it would be 2/3 grant. That's what I recall from when they were in here. Yeah, and I just expected to see the solicitation or something. Anyway,
Well, like I said, this is just Parks and Rec's contribution
Gotcha.
for that. I think they're pretty close to funding, so
Yeah.
we probably will
okay.
see a final design and final approved plans. skate park, I touched on that. I mean, that's very early in the stage. We're put a little bit of money aside for that. We do have space for them lined out in rec park for that. That's a very big dollar amount. They're gonna be looking for some grants and stuff, and there's gonna be some matching that goes along with that.
There's $5,000 in the budget proposed.
Great. Excellent.
And finally, we put in a couple of line items for some special initiatives. Traffic calming, something we all hear a lot about. The funds budgeted here, $7,500, would be used to implement recommendations of the upcoming bike and pedestrian plan. Recommendations could include items such as driver feedback signs, rapid flashing beacons, signage, and other low-cost features. We also budget for invasive species response to respond to tree infestations by the emerald ash borer and other invasive species with tree removal and replanting. That's $6,500. Flood resiliency, and we're building a reserve for maintenance of improvements and removal of sediment in East Middlebury. Energy efficiency, funding for energy efficiency projects on municipal buildings, including energy audits. This $10,000 a year set aside has been very successful in identifying projects and climate-friendly ways forward for some of our projects. And that is the capital budget proposal for a total of $1,653,455, up about $92,000 from last year's total of $1,560,585.
I'd like to circle back and just get a question, Emily and Dan. Bakery Lane, what year are you projecting that project? You've got 150,000 in this next year's budget.
So it's in engineering right now. We had originally proposed for it to go early in this year. I don't know reality, but.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about it when we do the ARPA, but tentatively this year, this next construction year.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is right now with the supply chain, if we get it out to bid too late, there's not enough time for
Yeah. Understood.
contractor to get the water line. Maybe.
Okay. So,
Do you want to do your ARPA presentation now?
I think we're ready for ARPA, aren't we? Yeah.
So circling back to the ARPA funding,
This one? There we go.
Good. So South Street, we touched on this in the previous budget discussion, but essentially it's the final phase of a 4-phase project. Really, it's sort of turned into now a 5-phase project because we've broken out the water line as one phase and then the storm sewer as the second phase. And the funding we were proposing to use a lot of the ARPA funding on this project just because it is relatively shovel ready and it's a good, it'll tap into so many different areas that need improvements. So for this one, the highway would be utilizing 534. These are all rough estimates, granted. We're still in the final design now, so we'll have a better understanding when Landmark completes that process. But these numbers are relatively recent. I think Jamie gave them to you this fall, right? Right, or late summer. So pretty realistic for actual cost, I think. And so some of this will obviously go in the first part, the water phase, and then highway, sidewalk, stormwater, wastewater will be more in the second portion of the project. For the South Street, for the water piece of it, it would be relocating the water main to the east side. Again, as we mentioned earlier, it'd be so that we have the isolation distances necessary for the sewer line replacement. And so that we're proposing, as soon as Jamie gets through the engineering, which shouldn't take a lot of time, because he is basing it off of plans that are 10 years old. So we would propose to bid that out this winter in hopes of constructing, depending on how long it takes to get water line material in stock. The last I had heard was 8 months. So proposing to construct that spring, summer of 2023. And then they would tie it up, close it up for the winter, just do a base coat pavement on there. And then we would put out the next phase for the sewer stormwater separation. And then that would also include the highway component of it, which will be the repaving and then some traffic calming, 2 bump outs at crosswalks, and there other restriping it slightly so that it won't really change the lane width at all, but it will feel narrower to hopefully slow traffic down slightly.
And new curbing,
New
the
curbing.
whole length.
Are the bump outs gonna be at the Chipman Park instances?
There, one of the Chipman Park, yeah, I think there are 4 crosswalks in there. 2 of them are very close together, and so we didn't want it to be too close. And so I think it was Chipman North. It might have been Chipman North and Chipman South, because
Yes.
Porter, the crossing at Porter doesn't really go
Yes.
anywhere, and yeah, so I think it was the 2 Chipman.
Are those gonna take out any on-street parking? No.
And then, so then, again, the wastewater will be the second phase of the project. That will be utilizing the Clean Water State Revolving Fund grant that we've been allocated for $664,000. So that will pay for both the stormwater and the wastewater component of it. Jamie estimated the sewer alone, like that piece he thinks will be about $532,000. And so whatever's left, we'll put it towards the stormwater work. And then the highway portion is estimated to be at $644,000. So the ARPA funding will be able to pay for a good portion of that, $534,500. And then we would dip into the capital fund for the remainder. The balance, and then I get when Jamie gave us this cost estimate, it had the stormwater in the highway estimate that he had. So some of that 644 is being paid out of the CWSRF funding. And then for the proposed improvements, Landmark had identified sidewalk just where there were actual crossings, infrastructure crossings, where the panels were going to be damaged in that process. But we went out and walked the whole stretch and sprayed out additional areas where there are long stretches that replacement makes sense since we're in the construction phase already. And so we do have money set aside in the sidewalk capital budget to allow for that. His original estimate was, I think, 100,000, and so we're sort of assuming that we've doubled it in what we've marked out. But it will also, like his were very segmented, so this will be longer stretches, which typically you get a better price on when you're in construction.
Music to my ears right there.
Stormwater has been a hot topic with the infrastructure committee, and I think the selling points of this project are obviously we're separating the combined sewer overflow. And so the southern part of the project will outfall at Green Mountain Drive. Is it Drive? It is, right? Place, Green Mountain Place. And then the northern section will actually come out on Mill Street, which is a pretty large drainage area. That a lot of that network that's on the slide there is all outflowing at the Mill Street outfall there. And so what I would propose in time is to do the feasibility study for stormwater that I mentioned earlier. And one of the potential sites that I would identify for doing a treatment system would be that Mill Street parking lot. Could be in ground, we could figure out the best approach so that we're not losing parking, but we can provide treatment for a large area, tapping into that section. So I think that'll be down the road more, but just food for thought. It's a consideration that we're looking into as we further develop these plans. And then as I mentioned, we're making sidewalk improvements, bump outs. This said 4 locations, but once we actually looked at it in the field, we realized that 4 was too many. They were just way too close together. So we've reduced it to 2 locations. And then the line striping will make the lanes feel narrower, which has a calming effect on cars that are racing through. Bakery Lane. So this taps into a few different components again. It's replacing the water main, replacing and realigning the gravity sewer and sanitary force main, and then improving pedestrian access and addressing drainage issues and improving the pavement that's there, or lack of pavement that's there. And so this one is currently in engineering. We have very rough project estimate numbers. So I would anticipate these numbers to change considerably once we have a better scope on it. I think we've also added things like a wet well to the pump station. So that'll drive that cost up a little bit more. But essentially, we'll be tapping into some ARPA funding here and then also some capital funding to fill it out. And the original proposal, as I mentioned, was to bid it this winter, but we have to make sure we hit the window for supply, so we'll have to see how that aligns best. And then to utilize our water ARPA funding, Dan identified Foot Street as a good opportunity because it's already engineered and we have pretty recent cost estimates on that one. And so that would be a water main replacement along the southern section of Foot Street from Lower Foot to Route 7. And that one, and then it would, after the relocation or replacement, it would be reclaim and paving to get that road into better shape. And so that one we would propose to bid in the fall of 2003 and then start construction in the spring.
That's the final phase of that water main on that road, right?
Correct, and that was also identified in the hydraulic study as a plunge upgrade.
Yeah.
That was my question. So that was one of those.
We've been chipping away at that entire water line on that road for a number of years, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That one used to have considerable breaks. I don't know if you remember
Over by
Sheriff
Foster's.
Keeler talking about blasting and all that. I don't think we see the breaks in that, in the upper or the northern part of that we used to now that that's all been replaced, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Is that universal? Right?
Oh, it was a thin walled cast.
And then last but not least, because we have the CWSRF funding, which will pay for most of the sewer line replacement on South Street. We still have a lot of the ARPA funds available, and so Halliday Road Pump Station is a good fit for that goal. That one was already engineered, and we've received a quote for the generator, that the town could potentially buy the generator now, because I think the lead time on the generator is a few months out. So that's a conversation we're still going to have with the infrastructure committee to see how we want to do it. But that's one that we will potentially be putting out to bid very soon, or it's next week.
Yeah.
Next week we have the pre-bid. Wait,
Yeah, bids are due right before the holidays.
no, it's Friday. Friday we have a pre-bid.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's going out to bid. The opening is right before Christmas, with a plan to construct spring of this coming season.
This is the real estate one we did last week. Right? The extra?
It's right down in the low spot. So if you're heading kind of south on Holiday Road, you go down in the dip, and it's right there on the left if you're heading kind of southwestish. Yeah.
Past the little gravel road.
Yeah.
Is that the
Middlebury
woods? In the
South.
woods? Is that?
It'll be-
No,
that's what
no,
you
it's on the edge of the little field.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I just don't think I've ever seen it. But I
Right
don't
now
go
it's
that way
not very
often.
noticeable,
Right, yeah.
but it'll be like the little house style that we'll have to put in elsewhere. And then the rest of the slides, I think we talked about the next slide. Just the other funding for highway out of the capital budget, but we touched on most of those in the other budget discussions. These are the stormwater projects that the town needs to look into in the very immediate future. The ones in red on the left have expired or are about to expire. And so most of the fire station we've dealt with, that one's fine. Adams Acres is going to be a big one. It's over 12 acres of impervious, and we are a co-permittee on it because we own the road. But it's Keystone, Hope, the American Legion, it's a lot of businesses over there that all share that permit. So we're in the process now of working with them to get maintenance agreements signed so that the town has the right to maintain and work on the permit. And then once we get that moving forward, we'll start submitting the paperwork to the state to, it'll be a major stormwater system that has to be designed for that area.
So just, thank you. And just to remind us where we started, way back in May, the select board talked about allocating ARPA funds for capital improvements. And this was your preferred approach, and you directed staff to go forth and do their good work and bring back a proposal which is encapsulated in what Emily has provided to you this evening.
When you went over major drivers, did it include the potential 3-year person?
It did not,
Okay,
the
so that-
actual
yeah.
budget draft. And that's, that the thinking on that's been refined somewhat.
Right. Yeah, I saw.
And after all that, how much is the ARPA funds are left?
After all of this,
Right,
nothing.
they're gone.
Yeah,
It's gone. Okay.
they have to be used by
Yes.
2026.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
That's helpful, thank you.
Mhm.
I do know we have a couple students here, I think, from the college. Did you have any questions that would help you with your studies?
Had a couple, if that's okay.
Can you come up?
We're
a bit?
all here, so.
You have to be on the record.
Hi, I'm Eliza. I think I emailed
every single one of you, so it's nice to meet you.
Have you all been as hard to get in touch with as I have
Well-
been? Have you, I've been,
Pretty close.
we've been, yeah,
Next Wednesday.
yes.
I'm Katrina. I'm handling Regens. So it's a 4-man group, and we're each dealing with a different town. And our hope is that by the end of it, we can create some cross comparisons and try and understand how each town allocated ARPA funding and what their decision-making process was. So very helpful to be here tonight.
I think my main question is, based on my understanding, a lot of what's happening in Middlebury is that the Department of Public Works is, as you sort of told me, is matching your priorities with funding needs. And I'm just curious how you all came to that decision as opposed to sort of what we've seen in other towns where they have separate ARPA committees or sort of directly surveying the public if they want kind of separate projects that haven't been brought forward to be used for the funding.
We had a discussion at the select board level. This funding is definitely extra funding, but it also came with some stipulations and some goals to work on projects. It was to increase economic activity, but also to invest in the future of the community. And I think the select board felt pretty comfortable that we are charged with doing that at the select board level. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we felt that it wasn't like we had this lottery that we just needed to find some way to spend it. We have more projects routinely than we have funding for. And so our hope was that we could invest that into things that brought more of a long-term return to the community, and to use that to match and get other grants or other funding that was out there. So to use it as seed money to get more projects done. And there's no one who knows that better than our staff. And so we felt the strength was in using the staff to bring forward candidate projects that we could look at and approve at the board level.
Which is a lot of what you just saw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really helpful and useful to know. One other question, I was looking specifically at the requests for ARPA funds that you have open from like Turning Point and Maple Broadband and the Housing Coalitions. And I'm wondering just currently at this point, how those decisions are being made if they aren't kind of brought forward from the staff inside. And if those have been easy decisions, just for all of you.
In other words, will we fund those out of ARPA?
Yeah, that's
The board has to make that decision.
Okay.
Yes, and that'll be a board decision.
Okay. And at this point, are you in a similar position to other towns where you need to have kind of allocated everything by March 2023?
I don't think that's the deadline. You have to have obligated everything by December 31st, 2024.
Okay, perfect.
And then actually spent it
By December
26.
31st, 2026.
Okay,
Yeah.
then that must have been an internal deadline elsewhere.
Well, it did slide, period.
Okay, perfect. Those are my kind of group questions, and I look forward to meeting the rest of you. But thank you for having us today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for attending. So with that, I think Jesse's online. Jesse's would like to speak to us on a petitioning process for nonprofits. Hi, Jesse, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks for inviting me to be here tonight.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you turning this into a conversation. And this was a while ago and not at all related to this conversation, but I just want to spotlight something that one of your select board members said. I too have driven into Bristol and appreciated those signs that give you messages. It once told me that I had nice hair, and I was unsure that day. I was unsure. And it built confidence in my driving and my hair that day. So just as a side note.
And I think if you've been driving faster, it might have told you that you had bad hair.
Well, and that may have been true if my window had been down too.
Yeah.
So it's a very honest sign.
No.
They say you had no hair?
That's my message.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time because I recognize that you have covered a lot of topics tonight, and your patience is commendable. So I appreciate you taking the time to hear from me. And I just want to first ask if everyone had the chance to read the letter that we sent, which requests the petitioning requirements be waived for returning agencies requesting the same amount in previous years.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We're all diligent.
Well, and I don't think we have, Jesse, I don't think that we have required petitioning for returning
I was
agencies.
going to say that, yeah.
Okay, that's great to hear.
Our policy is new requests do need to do the petitioning. And I'm not sure that we're of a desire to change that for this year. We did during COVID, but the agencies that are previously funded have to fill out a form and then are reviewed on a rolling process. I think we review 5 each year, and they present to us what they're put into the draft budget by virtue of previously funded and approved.
Okay, that's great. That's not the case for all towns in Addison County. And so it was a letter that went out to every town on behalf of our funded partners. United Way does not request town funding, but we do advocate for local nonprofits who do. And so what we wanted to do was just continue the conversation beyond the pandemic to recognize that there were other reasons why we were asking for that to continue. And one of the things that we learned about, just for the sake of the fact that I'm here and I have your ear, I'll throw it out there. During listening tour that we conducted last fall was that the petitioning process is quite challenging for local agencies because many of these agencies don't request town funding from just one town. They're often requesting from multiple towns, and the collective bucket of those funds is what they look at the end of their budget for what town funding they receive. And so when I think towns are thinking about this petitioning process, they're thinking of their petitioning process solely. Whereas when agencies are thinking about it, they're thinking of the collective counts that they have to track and maintain. And what I just want to share with you, and if you didn't know, because it was something that I've learned recently too, is that it's a lot of work for an agency to do that, to keep track of the different requirements for each town. And also make sure that they have the right number of voters' signatures, and then also make sure that all of those are actually registered voters for that town, which also creates possibly an administrative burden on the town as well. And so I just wanted to share that information. It's one of the my objectives in this this mission of trying to make this a lot easier for our agencies as well as for our towns, because as I said, I think there's some administrative burden on the town side of things that could be possibly lightened a little bit. But it's just one thing that I've learned a lot about in the last couple of years that has some light has been shown on that for just my understanding. And what I gathered last year was that a lot of towns felt like their petitioning process is very simple. But I think, again, it was because they were thinking of their own petitioning process and not the collective. And from the agency side, it's a daunting process. And it's a lot of work, especially when there's low, the workforce is low. There's high turnover often in the nonprofit sector. It's something that the nonprofits typically have to do on their weekends, which either that means not being paid, not being compensated for that time, or it affects the budget in overtime.
Okay, I think it's a non-issue for us because any of the ones that have habitually requested and received funding, still, I don't see us waiving the requirement for them to request, but they don't need to petition. But if anybody new will still need to petition. I don't think we want to invite people and have us be the ones deciding what goes on the ballots and whatnot. I do, we fund a lot of the nonprofits already, so I think that our system's pretty fair to the nonprofits.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to just take the time to share that information with you. I think as representatives, you hold a lot of power and often meet with other people in other towns and hopefully can share some of this information. I don't get asked to speak at all of the select boards. Every town receives these, and sometimes they invite me to come and sometimes they don't. And so, like I said, if you happen to meet up with other select board members from other towns and you feel like sharing this information, I would greatly appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Appreciate the good work you guys do out there.
Here, have a good night.
Yeah. Is Danielle with us?
It is.
Chief, I think this is the one you're here for.
So the town received $9,377.36 from the National Opioid Settlement, and we had a request from the Turning Point Center of Addison County for those funds. I fully support that. The Turning Point Center of Addison County has done a wonderful job for a lot of years. We've always enjoyed a pretty close relationship with them. Working with the director, Danielle's a new director, or fairly recent director of the organization. And her and I have had some pretty good conversations about this. Anyway, we just don't give money away. And so I put together a memorandum of understanding on the transmittal of this money to Turning Point Center of Addison County with a couple of stipulations that we get a kind of a breakdown on what their strategy was for spending the money, and after 6 months, 180 days, give us a post-fund transfer report on how the monies were spent. Danielle's on board with that. She had no problem with this.
Okay, Danielle's with us here too.
Good.
Hi, Danielle. You're muted, Danielle.
Hi.
Hi there. Does that sound?
Hi. So I'm the director of the Turning Point Center. I'm new to this position, started in June. Had a great conversation with Chief Hanley. So we've been here for quite some time. Turning Point's been in Middlebury for about 16 years, and our whole premise is to employ people that have lived experience. So not only are we helping people that are struggling, but we're also giving people that may have struggled in the past an opportunity to have a professional career, and also to continue to be that contributing member and support people. And we are looking to continue to expand our programming, to implement family programming, and also to reach more of the youth demographic. And all our services are free to the people that use them, so we do rely on state grants or other donations to continue to do the work that we're doing. And as everyone's aware of, the opiate epidemic is not over and continues to affect Vermont significantly. This last 2 years have been record years for overdose death in Vermont, so we hope to continue to work and touch people and work with other organizations to hopefully trend that number down as the years go.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Pleasure of the board?
I'll move to transfer the settlement payments received by the National Opioid Settlement to Turning Point of Addison County at a total amount of $9,377.36.
Second.
And seconded. Comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I further move that the board gives permission to Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign as a duly authorized agent of the town a memorandum of understanding outlining and detailing Turning Point's proposed uses of and reporting requirements associated with its proposal to use opioid settlement funds to address substance abuse disorder in the community.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on that? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Thanks, Chief. Thank you, Danielle.
Great.
Thank you.
Dana and Joe.
Last one standing.
We're
That's right, then there were two.
We're delighted to be with you here at this high energy point of the evening. You're all just raring to go here.
Yeah.
And we want to thank those of you who are able to come to our open meetings to learn more about the library project, Kathleen and some of the rest of you. Those of you who are not able to come, there was a PowerPoint presentation in your board packet. There's a Zoom recording on our website, and Dana's going to give you like the 5-minute version of that presentation, but I have to tell you, it just pales in comparison with if you were there in person. You could see the excitement in the room that we had, and real enthusiasm, I think, for this project. And if you weren't able to come, we would love to get together with you like on a one-on-one basis or a small group and share with you the vision for what we're hoping to create with the library, because there's going to come a point in the not too distant future when we're going to come to you with a recommendation that's going to have a $ with a large number of zeros after it, and we think that you would be more receptive to that request if you had a sense of this vision. So Dana's going to tell you a little bit about what was in that presentation and also what we heard from some of the members of the community.
Yes. So we held two meetings for the general public. One was in person, one was remote via Zoom, and then we held two additional meetings, one with Mesa, the parents group at Mary Hogan, and one at Eastview. We just did that one today, and Dan came with us.
I missed it. I completely forgot.
Yeah. Farhad, you showed up to many meetings,
Yes,
so
I
thank you for
You
that.
made me feel guilty, so I went.
And you brought refreshments for the face-to-face ones, so you get extra points.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Which were very good.
I'm happy to say that the meetings were all really well attended. We had about 25 people or a little more at both of the general public meetings, and then about 30 people between Mesa and Eastview. As Joe mentioned, we gave a PowerPoint presentation. Joe, myself, and Jim Gish sort of co-presented. We gave a little background on the library and some of the challenges and deficiencies that we're dealing with. We didn't want to dwell on that too much, but we wanted to touch on it for people that maybe aren't familiar with what we've been dealing with. We gave an overview of the project team and sort of introduced the project itself to the community, because I think for people that haven't been following our meetings, and I don't think many people have been tuning in to our hybrid project team meetings, this was news to them and they wanted to hear about the process and the progress so far. We gave a quick summary of the feedback that we've received from the community already over the years. Sort of let people know that we appreciate they've been participating in this conversation since the last building committee was in existence and all the way since then, and tried to sort of reflect back what we've heard from them. And then Joe shared a really high-level overview of our vision for the new building. So we communicated that we want to have a library that is welcoming, accessible, and safe. That's a community hub, and that is flexible and sustainable so that we can support community members a long way into the future. I know that's not new language to you because it was in our charge, but it was new to a lot of people that we presented it to.
And then we kind of broke that down to explain a little bit about what we meant by each of those. And if you look in your PowerPoint presentation, you'll see some images there. We just want to reassure you, those images are not what we're planning for the library to look like. It's just kind of to spark your imagination a little bit. So if you see something there and you say, hey, that's great, let's do that, then we will. If you see something and you feel otherwise, we won't do that.
No, it's perfect. Yeah, so we talked a little bit about how some of those lofty aspirations translate into physical spaces and square foot needs. We shared that to really achieve this vision, we need about 24,000 square feet in our library, which is about 6,000 square feet more than we have now. Adding that 6,000 square feet will let us double the space for youth services. So we'll add an additional 3,000 square feet for youth and teens. We'll add an additional 2,500 square feet for public meeting spaces, which is not quite doubling what we have right now, but close to doubling it. And then we'll be able to make a number of other improvements. We'll be able to consolidate and improve the quiet and comfortable seating for study and remote work and things like that. And then I went through a few more slides, maybe 7 or 8 individual specific spaces that we want to add, like a conference room and a teen room, and then specific spaces that we want to expand. So I won't go into all of that in my 5-minute condensed version, but like Joe said, I'd be really happy to meet with any of you and talk about that stuff, because to me it's the exciting nitty-gritty that is really what we're going to be getting at the end of this project. And we also have a recording of the remote meeting if anyone wants to watch that. So then we opened it up for feedback. Every group we met with had a lot to say, which was awesome. I'm just going to share a couple highlights that came up pretty much with each group we spoke to. So we really heard loud and clear that the community has an overwhelming desire to make the library more accessible, especially for people with mobility issues. The critical role the library plays for children and teens was affirmed, and the need to design spaces that support those age groups specifically. The necessity of designing a building that can accommodate changing technology for decades to come. Some people were thinking way further ahead than I was in terms of technology, which was impressive. The value of the library's partnership with Middlebury Community Television. The need for outdoor programming space, especially in light of the pandemic, and a strong commitment to getting off fossil fuels and designing a more sustainable library building. So a lot of this feedback was kind of affirmation that we're on the right track, I think, with this project, and some of it was new and kind of thought-provoking, which is great because we're at the point in the project where we can incorporate new feedback. So the project team will consider all of the feedback. I've also received a fair few emails from people that couldn't attend the meetings, wanted to share their thoughts, so the project team will review that as well. One of the big benefits or goals of sharing all this information at this point is that we're hopefully laying the groundwork for the next phase of public engagement that the project team has coming up. As Joe mentioned, you all know we are considering or exploring 4 options, and each of those options would allow us to fulfill this vision to varying degrees. They're not all created equal. All the great things that we talk about in this presentation, not every option achieves them to the same degree. So we wanted the community to have an understanding of that vision so that when we get to the point where we're sharing information on the options, the pros and cons, and the costs, that people have context for it and can give us some informed feedback. And I think that time for sharing that information is almost upon us. The project team is meeting on Thursday for the last time with Henry Erickson, who is the professional estimator we engaged. So he will be sharing the estimates for options C and D. That's the annex option and the EEI site option. And at that point, I think the project team will probably pivot and start focusing on sharing that information with the select board and the community, soliciting more feedback from the community on what they think about those options, and then working towards making the recommendation to the select board. So we don't really have information on exactly what that process is going to look like or the timeline yet, because the project team needs to talk about it on Thursday and start planning those next steps. But that's where we're headed.
And just in case you haven't been keeping up to speed with Dana's occasional op-ed pieces in the Addison Independent, she shared the best idea that anybody has come up with in her most recent op-ed piece.
Well,
The tunnel.
a young library patron suggested to me very seriously that we should really consider including a secret passageway in the new library building. So that's on the list.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yep. Would be important.
I think it'd be fabulous.
I also loved when I found out that the little door leading to the children's room doesn't actually, like, you couldn't use it, because that is very cute.
We also had a teen suggest that we need a tower.
Yeah.
You know, for that maybe if we want to have a teen room, it should be its own separate. You know.
It's so sweet though, because I don't know, secret passages and towers, it's amazing because that's how kids see the library. To them, the whole thing is already like this magical kingdom place. So it's very sweet and not surprising that that's what they want to see reflected in the building.
I'd just like to make a comment. These two are doing an outstanding job leading this committee. It's incredible. You can see the enthusiasm at 9 o'clock at night, but they're doing an incredible job. And with their briefing and the presentation they do, throwing Jim Gish in, it's one of the best presentations, and I've been to gazillions of them, but it's really, really well done. And it engages the people that are there, and so it's, I enjoy it. And even today, second time, it's great. Thanks. Yeah.
I attended the one in the meeting room. Was that last week?
Yeah.
It seems like a long.
2 weeks ago,
Oh, was
before
it 2 weeks
Thanksgiving.
ago?
Yeah.
Anyway, oh yeah, last weekend was Thanksgiving. It was really great. Like Dan said, the co-presenting was really well done. It was a great presentation. I learned some things that I didn't know, and enjoyed knowing some of the numbers about the library and how it's used, and so it was great.
Lot to think about how we take this to the people and get the sense of what the community in total will support, you know. And so as you develop that, I think that's something we ought to be thinking about. How do we survey and get a sense for what size project, what size bond or payment the community supports, what their value that they, when it comes to the dollars and cents, what the value that they place on it.
Well, part of our process here has been not to lead with the dollars.
No, I know that, but when you've got it, at some point, and
Sure.
when do we do that? You know, one of the biggest school in the state does not have a turf field, which is unbelievable because they overreached and then they never regrouped. You know, CVU has a very mediocre lacrosse field, for instance, and there's at least half of the schools that play have nicer fields than the most wealthy school in the state because they didn't do it right, and they didn't have the community behind them. So how do we grow that support? And that's something I think it's going to be challenged, but you're doing great so far. So
Well, I think it's something that we are going to be challenged with here.
that's why I'm thinking about it. That's why I'm thinking about it. You know, but I want to see your report. I want to see. I don't know which one I support yet. So we're ways from that. But
But I think something is important that they've imparted on Farhad and I is what kind of stomach does the select board have for bonding, and I mean, that's important for them.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to,
Keep us in the loop.
yeah, well,
Because we need to be processing it along with you, so that we're, you know, we need, like, I'm thinking of this as you're presenting it, I've been watching all your slides and stuff, and I'm anxious to hear that next level of the estimating, and I think one of the things about the estimating that'll be interesting is they're estimating like the EDI one in isolation, and assuming that some of the, like, you know, parking and whatnot is the responsibility of just the library, and if that is a better fit, are there other things, and this is something we as a board need to talk about, because the other issue that we really need to work on is housing. And, you know, we only have a couple potential sites where we can impact housing, and that happens to be one of them, so.
Yeah, that fourth option is the trickier one, and the estimate for that isn't quite as straightforward as the others.
Yeah.
and that's going to be talked about tomorrow in a meeting.
Or perhaps Thursday.
Day after
Or
tomorrow.
Thursday, because tomorrow's Wednesday. I'm lost in the week because I got things that are going, I don't know, but maybe Thursday.
Well, it's something for us all to be pondering.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you
much,
all.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. You always seem to get the,
Good luck on that drive, too.
Yeah, thank you.
It's uphill all the way.
Yeah, but I'll be looking for the speed signs on the way back.
Oh, yeah,
They
you're
have
going
a
to
message for me.
see how your hair is.
Yeah.
See if you have good hair today.
Exactly.
Kathleen, ADP?
ADP, delighted to convey Finance Director Nicholas Gill's recommendation that the board authorize us to outsource payroll processing with ADP Workforce Now. In Nicholas's memo, he notes that with the past year's reshuffling of personnel and job functions, it's become abundantly clear that keeping payroll in-house is no longer practical or economical. A tight labor market has made data entry a costly endeavor, and modern software, such as that provided through Workforce Now, eliminates that data entry, allowing for added oversight capabilities for managers and modern-day resources to town employees. For instance, tracking of time off accruals and pay stubs will be available through an app for all employees.
You guys are doing that all manually?
This is fantastic.
I was shocked what you were really doing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I
Oh,
didn't
gosh.
realize it was that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, everybody was keeping paper timesheets,
Oh.
and
You
we were
write up-
putting them in an Excel spreadsheet.
Writing the checks out longhand.
2020s.
we didn't even do that at the Swift House.
Yeah. This is fantastic.
Okay, enough. You've
Yeah.
heard enough.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, please do this.
So much easier, and then people can access their stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great idea.
I will stand down from the hard sell. Okay.
Yeah.
The only comment I have is that I hoped that the proposal would be for more than longer than 6 months. Like, it was only 6 months of guaranteed, you know, I was hoping it might have said 12 months.
Oh, the contract?
Yeah,
You're fearful that they'll raise it significantly?
who knows? But, you know, sometimes they won't, when businesses want to get, pick up business, you know, because it said somewhere in the memo or something I read, it said that it was half of your nearest,
At the nearest competitor.
yeah, it was half. So I'm interested to see
Is that
after
like
6.
their intro rate?
Right, this is a teaser.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I saw that, I was kind of hoping it was like at least a year contract, but
I moved to ADP for my business year and a half ago or so, and they didn't bump our contract significantly. You know, it's got the 3% or whatever.
We were looking at moving to them, too.
Yeah, they've
Couple
been,
years
they've
ago.
been,
Oh,
they've
forever.
been way,
They're-
they're one of the
I
largest.
feel
Yeah.
like I had them at some point.
I also feel like they're one of the largest, but they're also usually generally one of the higher cost ones as well. So that's
I
why it
used
was
to
a little
think that,
surprising.
which is why we always did it in-house.
Yep.
But I didn't find that
We're
they were
moving
that.
to them in a month.
Are you?
Are you?
I don't know if there's processing and the mechanization has made it so that it's less for them, and so that they're like.
Coming
I would
down.
think so.
Yeah.
No?
Regardless, I'm
let's go.
totally in favor.
Yes.
I had just hoped in the contract that the price was for a longer period of time. That's all. But I'll move to award a contract to ADP for payroll processing software and services. I didn't really think it was a sole source provision because you looked at another supplier, but I'll add that into the motion. At a total cost of $17,632 and authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the services agreement as a duly authorized agent of the town.
Second.
Questions?
Oh, gee, sorry.
Duly noted that we would like a longer contract if we can get one. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Next is the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank issued bonds for the town of Middlebury Solar Project, 15% of Acorn Energy Solar 3 LLC, and the Police Department's Adaptive Reuse Project in February of 2022. If we're amenable, in order for staff to proceed with the drawdown of funds from the bonds, the appointment of authorized representatives for matters relating to the loans from the bond bank is required. Additionally, one of the post-closing responsibilities of borrowers is filing a certificate of completion form at the time of substantial completion of the project. As the solar project is complete and up and running, a certificate of project completion for the project is provided for the board's review and approval if amenable. Questions? Pleasure of the board.
I move the board appoint Town Treasurer Elizabeth Dow, Assistant Town Treasurer Kathleen Ramsey, and Finance Director Nicholas Gill as the town's authorized representatives in matters relating to its loan from the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank for the Police Department Adaptive Reuse Project and Solar Project, 15% of Acorn Energy Solar 3 LLC, and further to authorize Town Clerk Ann Webster to sign the appointment of authorized representatives forms on behalf of the Select Board.
Second.
Questions? All in
Reverse
favor?
that?
Aye.
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 All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just asked him if he rehearsed that. I mean, you practice those things.
I move that the board sign the certificate of public completion for the solar project as presented.
Second.
Can we have a friendly to project completion?
Project completion for the solar
I
project.
think you said public.
Oh,
Yeah.
very good then.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. That's very friendly.
friendly, okay.
Friendly second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, next is, we have a town college lunch. And we have Kathleen has, for some time, been keeping a attendance roster because it became a question about who was going to be up next. And it was one that was canceled due to COVID, and Dan had been our selectee. It was his turn, and that was a year ago. And
It's been a couple of years.
and so I would recommend that we keep Dan in the rotation, and then others will continue to rotate as their turn comes up. Also is a rough draft of the agenda. Now, this is a rough draft that Kathleen assembled based upon reviewing what we had for that for the agenda a year ago, and things that are current issues right now. This does not include the college's input on the agenda at this point. But, so, it is subject to change some. It's a very full agenda. There's a lot to talk about. And given it's usually a 1 hour time block, maybe slightly over, I think if we add something, something will slide. Is there anything that anybody felt that we should be talking to the college that's not on the agenda?
They had been involved in the previous EDI.
They were the drivers of it originally.
Right.
Yes.
They gave the land to us, so we could
Yes. With the hopes that the town could make it happen. So-
Right, oh, I see. I see,
Yeah.
okay.
It's pretty interesting that the college updates are childcare and housing. That's two things you usually don't see on a
College.
college.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
except for, well, it's pretty cool because
Yep.
they're very good, but it's also very critical to their
Well, we
employees as
need,
well as
right?
everybody in the community, so.
Problems for
It's certainly, they're good projects for us to collaborate on and to have as top priorities together.
Yes.
Are there any comments on that? Is that, it's kind of informative, make sure everybody knows what's going on. It's right around the corner. It's,
I'm glad that the library and the EDI is on there, and Dan is on there, so that'll be a good help to talk about it.
okay.
Which college representatives are there? I'm sorry, I might have spaced out when you were discussing.
That is typically Lori Patton, David Provost,
Sue Ritter, right?
Sue Ritter.
Yeah.
And they may bring somebody else, like if we were talking, we've kind of given them what we feel are things. They might bring Matt to talk about the summit process and what's going on there, because that's more in his territory now. But Matt Curran, but depending upon what's going on, they may bring others.
Sure.
To talk about an issue. Typically, they'll try to have the subject matter expert. But that's 6 to 7 people is about normal.
Oh, nice.
Okay, if there's no questions or comments, then we'll move on. Is Jen with us?
Hey guys,
Hey, Jen.
Oh,
you probably thought I was gonna be in your nannies.
I wish I was in my jammies.
Zoom.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us, Jen.
Yeah, I'm just here to ask for an authorizing resolution for a municipal planning grant. They have come along again this year. It felt like it snuck up on me, but we need to do a town plan update for November, I think November 28th, 2025. And you talked about the zoning bylaw, it takes quite a few months to get through the hearing process. So it's probably best to apply for a consultant to help us in town plan update materials to prepare for that process in advance. I don't know if you want any more details about what that would look like, but it seems like it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, any questions? I am happy she's looking out because these things they do come up on us fast, don't they? So, okay, pleasure of the board.
I move to approve the submission of an FY23 municipal planning grant application seeking $22,000 in funds for a consultant to assist with the preparation of materials for a town plan update. I further move to authorize required town matching funds of $2,000 for the grant application.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, Jen, thanks for looking at those out a couple of years ahead, so we're not scrambling.
No problem, thank you.
So in 18, we put in there discussion of the
Yeah.
second meeting in December. You thought I was going to forget it, didn't you?
I thought you might. I was getting ready to jump in. Yeah, I had talked to a couple select board members prior to this meeting, and there was a thought that meeting 2 days after Christmas, in that little window between Christmas and New Year's, might be a hassle for a couple folks. And maybe a suggestion to pack 2 meetings into early January rather than meet during that holiday week.
So we meet 3 times in January.
Correct. We'd meet 3, 10, and 24 of January rather than 27 of December.
Is the 3rd back, the first day back at school?
Yes.
It's gotta be, right?
Yeah.
It is.
It's not the second? Wait a second.
Second is a, the
Is second
second
a
is
Monday?
officially
Monday, that'd be the
holiday.
holiday.
Holiday,
Yeah, because New Year's is on a Sunday.
Right.
So Christmas
Is
is on a
that-
Sunday this year.
Is that a challenge for you, Kathleen, with that Tuesday, or that Monday being a holiday? And then Tuesday having the meeting?
That's okay.
Kathleen is
It gives us less time to update the packet.
Try again.
What?
Gives us less time to update the packet, which
Yeah.
is fine.
Right.
Very small packet.
I thought you signed our names when I saw that.
How does that,
That's what
how
I
does
thought.
that impact the budget timeline? Is that okay and,
What we'll need
You're
to
not
do,
available
what
last
the
week
board
or
will need to
this
do
week?
is warn the public hearing
Is
at
that
its
half of it?
next meeting. We typically do that at the second meeting,
I guess.
but that's
I don't
fine.
know.
That'll give us enough notice of the public
so
hearing
we warn the public hearing, and the public hearing will be
on January 10th.
10th, okay.
Okay.
So
Is
no
that-
change.
And then we have to finalize it by the 24th for,
And that's a good point. Rarely, the board has chosen to meet in between the public hearing and the finalization of the
Okay.
budget if there's a lot of public input or controversy having to do with the budget proposal.
Which
so
could be the
that means a
17th.
potential of 4 meetings in January.
Wait, what's the first meeting?
If we wanted to modify the budget before the final.
Oh.
If there was a lot of input in the public hearing on the 10th,
Be like I was back in the guards.
we could potentially want to add a meeting
Get home till
to
11 o'clock
review
midnight
public
those
comments
days.
and put together an updated draft before we finalize it on the final meeting in January.
Okay.
What's your
Would that
thoughts
be
on
like
this, Kathleen?
A noon, or is that gonna be like a Tuesday
Works for me.
Works for you?
if we had another one? If we had a fourth
Is
meeting.
is there
what would-
really any impact?
The only thing
Probably
I can
so.
think of, it might be nice to have just a short meeting to do like the payroll and the
I was gonna say,
warrants
I have check warrants, so that's gonna
in January.
We could
Yeah.
do,
Just makes it a little longer.
be, yeah.
could we do a noon meeting the week of the 19th?
What for?
Or we need to do it to keep the schedule, payroll schedule? We need to do
Yeah,
it,
'cause what'll it do to payroll?
Well, you approve the payrolls after they're done sometimes, just
Okay.
depending on how they fall.
when would we need to have that short meeting in December to do that?
Really, I don't know if we will need one, but
Okay.
Okay, so you might call, we could even do that by Zoom,
yeah.
Yeah.
like we've done on
Yeah, I
others.
think like a quick noon by Zoom thing would be.
Just for the check warrants.
A Zoom
I'm
at-
not going to.
Yeah.
so
Zoom
again,
at noon?
Have to come
Yep.
extra, that's okay.
Okay. So we're moving the 27th, the meeting on the 27th of December 22 to the 3rd of January
23.
23.
Beautiful.
And then we'll have one on the 10th,
Then we're going to have one on the 10th and the 24th.
and maybe one more in
And
between.
maybe, that would be another noon situation, right? Like a quick.
Probably.
We don't know.
We don't know. It-
Right? Right, guys?
Maybe it's an all-weekend retreat.
Yeah. Beautiful.
All right?
Yeah.
Heather, check warrants.
Yes. I reviewed the warrants and found them in good order. I move to approve total expenditures in the amount of $422,613.80, consisting of $319,039.29 for accounts payable, $103,574.51 for payroll for the period of November 8th through November 29th, 2022.
Moved and seconded, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Board member concerns, Isabel.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Over my Thanksgiving break, I was lucky enough to go watch Middlebury College win a national championship for field hockey.
Oh, wow.
And what a great year on the 50th anniversary of Title IX. We're finishing out the year. Go support the women's hockey team. They're doing awesome. So they have a couple games coming up this Friday. You can go see one. But
Heather and
anything
I
you
are
can
always
do-
there.
Yeah, I love them. I love them. Anything you could do to support women in sports, you know?
Saturday is their special,
Was it ski with the Panthers?
yes, is Saturday, and it's like the Vermont Hockey Association supporting, like, promoting women's hockey to, girls hockey, and they're doing all 4 of the college teams have events. The UVM event has happened. I think the St. Mike's event might be the 10th, and then there's also one at Norwich as well. So.
Dan.
Wow, hockey. I love to
Yeah.
talk about hockey. My
Me
son's
too.
playing the Boston Bruins alumni team this Saturday at 2 o'clock.
Fun.
It's my youngest son. He's only 44, but
Only.
yep. Last year he played him, and he's the only one that got in a penalty. I was proud of him. He took down Bobby Carpenter. Right in the front of the net.
Wow.
Sorry, I don't have anything. Sorry I was a little late.
Heather?
I had a couple of quick things, and I meant to mention one when Emily and Dan were here, so I'll have to remember. We are meeting infrastructure on Thursday, right, this week? Yeah. So with the addition of the natural gas plant in Salisbury at the Goodrich Farm, the truck traffic that goes by my house now, that comes from Route 7 through Mile Bridge Road up Shardvilla Road, has increased exponentially. And I'm concerned about infrastructure on those 2 roads, particularly the bridge on 3 Mile Bridge Road that's narrow anyway. But just the condition, speedier deterioration of the infrastructure with the increase in the truck traffic that's traveling down to that plant now. Remind me to bring that up at Infrastructure Committee.
And so that's for the big digester up there, and they're bringing
Food scraps in?
Food wastes.
Okay.
I don't know, I thought it was only food waste, but I see Dundon's trucks, like septic tank pumping trucks going by. And
They
a lot
may
of
be
trucks.
hired
Big
them.
trucks.
Yeah, interesting, okay.
Okay.
A lot of trucks, big trucks.
Yeah.
Find it hard to believe they're putting human waste in there because that goes out on the fields, so.
Yeah, I know, but that,
Get it hot enough.
unless the septic pumping haulers are pumping food waste somewhere, anyway, that's just the type of trucks I see going by. So I just wanted to mention it. And then I meant to send you an email about this, Kathleen. One thing I noticed when I did expenditure review was the expenses going out for the turkey trot, which is great. But I'm just curious, if we could just, in the next, we will have a meeting before Christmas, yeah. What was the turnout for that, and what's the income? Nothing negative. I think it's great. I'm just curious with COVID and the event coming back, what did we see for turnout, and what's the income versus some of the expenses that go out on that? That's all I had.
I'm good, thanks.
I thought it was great to have United Way here and to start thinking about the outside organizations. I definitely feel like as the Shire town, as the downtown for the surrounding towns, we get asked more than is reasonable for a lot of community and regional services. We've got much lower per capita income than many of the surrounding towns. It's something that I'd like to ask some of these organizations what their funding model is, who they think their service area is, and how they come up with their asks for the various towns.
And we have an opportunity as we review them, so that, yeah, that you will have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Yep, we have been asking those questions as we've been doing the review the last few years to provide us some more detail and how they come up with a number they ask from us and how that compares to how many residents of our town they're serving versus other communities.